And welcome to the Bloomington Rotary Club's weekly celebration of service. It's February 9th, 2021. I'm your current president, Ashley Wesley. Thank you so much for being here today. Wish we had more time to have some more chatting, but hope you will connect after we finish our program today and keep up the chatting. Natalie, please show the flag graphic for 15 seconds of respectful silence. We ask that everyone remain on mute and take this time to personally reflect. Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Connie Cicales, who will be offering our reflection. Connie?
Thank you, President Ashley. I'm not special or different. In 2007, 1.5 million other people in the United States were diagnosed with colon cancer too. But what was special to me were the things I learned and the things I remember. I have 7. Number 1, if you want something done, call Gus Cicales. Even if he has to get the first speeding ticket of his life, he will do what needs doing. Number 2, people you assume will be there for you might be the very ones who run. People on your periphery will leap in. They will cook for you, bring you funny books and music, and later help you dig up your backyard to plant pretty flowers. Some will still bring you homemade chili 3 years after you fully recover. Number 3, warning to the germaphobic. Certain chemo nurses will get to know you as you bask in the chemo recliners week after week, and they will rush up to you when they see you sitting there and kiss you on the lips. 4, try to do what you want to be doing and work with people you like. The first thing I said to Gus after hearing my diagnosis was, "Oh no, I've been working for Leonard and now I'm gonna die." Number 5, try to follow my friend's advice. Keep your sense of humor. I'm pretty sure watching reruns of the Beverly Hillbillies saved me. And last, number 6, almost number 7, what Gus told me one night when I was feeling extra sorry for myself, something I did not want to hear. He said, "Sometimes what seems like a really big deal is just a bump in the road." Number 7, and it was.
Thank you so much, Connie.
You're welcome.
Definitely words to live by, and we're so glad that you are a survivor and you're here with us today to share your insight. We obviously have many guests with us today. We're about to break 100. I hope we have a few more folks join us. So I'm not going to introduce each one of you individually, but thank you so much for being here. And hopefully you enjoy our program today. And if you have any questions about Rotary, you can ask us and we'll help you become a member or learn more about how to do that. Thanks to our producers, Natalie Blaze, Michael Shermis, Sally Gaskell, and Aaron Davis, and roundabout reporter, Alon Barker, for making this all run smoothly and for keeping a record of these wonderful programs. Birthdays, Efrat Feverman today, February 9th, Lance Eberly, February 11th, Art Levy, February 12th, Jean Emery, February 13th, Judy Witt, Valentine's Day, February 14th, and Yolanda Trevino, February 15th. Happy birthday. And one membership anniversary, Jeff McKim has been a part of our club for 10 years. Congratulations. One note of congratulations to past President Lauren Snyder, CFP of the Matthew Snyder Group, who was recently recognized by Financial Planning as a top regional BD advisor under 40. He keeps surprising us, but we're not really surprised. So congrats, Lauren. Volunteering spotlight. Thank you to everyone that volunteered at Hoosier Hills Food Bank last week. Jim and Ann Bright, Kate Cruikshank, Owen Johnson, Jim Shea, and Michael Shermis. Thank you for showing up to pack boxes. We really appreciate it. And now we have a few minutes for some happy dollars. I'd like for you guys to share. I see Mike Baker is waving his hands. So Mike, take it away.
Well, I've been waiting a long time to announce our first grandchild, August Mason Lowell, born on February 4th. So we're very happy. $50 to Teacher Warehouse.
Congratulations. Wonderful news. Who's next?
It's Connie, and I've been waiting to do this. I forgot we don't do this every week. I want to give $5 happy for President Ashley, who's always so wonderful at highlighting everybody else's accomplishments and hardly ever says anything about herself.
Thanks, Connie. There's just so much to celebrate. I'm sure I could spend a whole meeting just talking about you guys. Anyone else have a happy dollar to share?
Hi, this is Sarah. I have $10 for a belated Groundhog's Day greeting for you all. Didn't get a chance to do happy dollars last week on the actual Groundhog's Day, and it sure doesn't look like we're anywhere close to spring yet, but we do have 5 more weeks and then it should be daffodils everywhere.
Fingers crossed.
I will match Connie's $5 in honor of Ashley. You make it so cheerful.
Yay!
Charlotte.
Yes, I'm Raj, and I have $5 for my son's birthday today, as well another $5 for me getting my second vaccine shot.
Yay.
Right, congratulations. That's great.
Ashley, I'd like to give a happy dollar. We have topped 100 participants.
Woo!
Woo!
Huge.
Yay.
I want to, can I offer also five happy dollars? One for my dear husband, who is, his birthday is actually February 12th, like Honest Abe. And we're going up to Chicago to celebrate. So I'm going to celebrate with my happy $5 for Rotary and plus a nice weekend in Chicago.
I want to give $5 happy for 5 inches of snow. I know that may not be popular with everybody, but I think it's gorgeous and beautiful.
Yeah, I love this.
Yes.
Ashley, I think I'll follow up with Leslie. I'll give $5 happy for still being able to shovel my 180-foot driveway with 5 inches of snow.
Oh, yay.
It took 2 hours, but I got it done.
Good.
Yay! Anyone else? You don't have to be a member of the club. If you're a guest and you have something happy to share, please do.
This is Tim Ellis. I'm going to give $10 in thanks to Charlotte Zitlow for her book that I just finished reading 2 days ago. It's a wonderful book. Thank you, Charlotte.
Yay, Charlotte. Yay, Charlotte.
Thank you, Tim. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Charlotte.
You're looking younger.
I want to second
thank
that.
you.
I want to second that. I also just finished Charlotte's book. Another $5 for Teachers Warehouse.
Whoa.
Thank you, Charlotte. It was a
Thank
wonderful
you.
book.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad people like it. You're supposed to learn something from it. I have no idea what that might be.
Well, for those of us who don't know Charlotte, perhaps you could tell us the name of the book and give us your last name again. Thank you.
The book is called Minister's Daughter, a terrible, and my name is Charlotte Zitlow, Zietlow. Minister's Daughter sounds very strange, but it's the subtitle is One Life, Many Lives. And that's true.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, final call for happy dollars. Going once. Okay, well, thank you for sharing. And I would like to introduce Liz Feidel, who will introduce our speaker for today. Liz?
Thank you, Ashley. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, James H. Madison, who is the Thomas and Catherine Miller Professor Emeritus of History at Indiana University. An award-winning teacher, Jim is the author of several books, including Eli Lilly, A Life, A Lynching in the Heartland, Race and Memory in America, and Hoosiers, A New History of Indiana. Jim's new book, The Ku Klux Klan in the Heartland, has been published recently by Indiana University Press. Please join me in welcoming Jim Madison.
Thank you, Liz. I've had my screen sharing disabled. Can the host please allow me to screen share, and I'll have some slides here. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to Bloomington Rotary. I've done it before in different circumstances. Maybe it's special today because it's nice to see so many people in the times in which we are. Oh, let's go back here. That's not where we want to start. There we are. The times in which we are living now, and seeing people who, some of whom I haven't seen in a long time, and all of whom I remember very fondly. So let me start. I have very little time and a lot of history, and I apologize for going very quickly, but it's necessary under our circumstances. This is a tough subject. And what we do with tough subjects as human beings, and maybe Americans especially, is to kind of whistle in the dark and assume they'll go away. That was certainly the way in which many, many Americans and Hoosiers approach the question of the Klan. The other thing we do, which I think is even worse, is to create myths, to make up stories, bedtime stories to tell children that make us feel good, or as the last administration had it, patriotic history that would celebrate the achievements of America and little else. That's all fake history, and it does a great disservice to the cause of democracy. Because the facts are that the Ku Klux Klan existed in Indiana in the 1920s in great strength and power in all 92 counties, including our own county. And it was not a marginal movement. It was not a fluke event that just came out of nowhere. It was a mainstream movement and event. Here they are, marching down Pennsylvania Avenue, our nation's capital, in the mid-1920s. This is the first sentence of my book. It sounds like a contradiction, but it's not. That this movement was as dark as the night, but as American as apple pie. Let's sort out one confusing. There are lots of confusing misunderstandings about the Klan. There are three clans in American history. The first we don't need to talk about, it's the South. And it's Southerners really still annoyed that they lost the war and trying to turn that around. The third Klan is the Klan that appeared in the civil rights era of the 1960s. I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. The Klan I'm going to talk about is the second Klan, the 1920s, that existed not only in the South, but in the North, from New York and New Jersey, across the Midwest to Oregon and California, a very widespread, popular, mainstream movement. And so the question is, who joined this Ku Klux Klan in the 1920s? Why should you become a Klansman? This is a wonderful pamphlet at the Indiana Historical Society Library, where a fair number of my primary sources for this book were found. And hats out to, was it Connie who said she liked the Beverly Hillbillies? I didn't know that until this. This is one of the myths that we've told over many years, that the people who joined the Klan were really the unwashed, the great unteachables, and therefore we really don't need to be too concerned about it. We're not responsible for it. It was a different kind of people. We now know that's not true. We have extensive analyses of membership lists, and we know that the people who joined the Klan in Indiana were mainstream Hoosiers, good Hoosiers in their own worldview, normal Hoosiers from all walks of life, from all the organizations that we know in America in the 1920s, including even the Rotary Club. But I have a piece of good news about Rotary, and I think I shared this with Jim Bright some time ago. There's an analysis of the membership in Wayne County and Richmond, Indiana. And some of the other service clubs, which I won't name, had sizable percentages of their members joining the Klan in Richmond. The membership from the Rotary Club in Richmond was very small, much smaller. I don't know why. I guess you can tell me why. But that's an interesting point about the membership. All of them were Protestants. All of them were native born. All of them were white. They were 100% Americans in their own worldview. All others were them, those people, different, less than 100%. The Klan was a partnership with the Protestant churches, the mainline denominations, led by the Methodists, the largest numbers, and then Presbyterians, Baptists, Disciples of Christ, and others. This is the Klan insignia worn on the front of their robes. The blood of Christ is in the center, other Christian symbolism in that insignia. And so on Sunday mornings across Indiana and across the Midwest, robed Klan members marched into a Protestant church down the center aisle and to the altar where they placed a financial offering, a cash offering. The choir and the congregation sang often "Onward, Christian Soldiers," one of their most popular hymns. There were all sorts of rituals that mixed Klan and Protestant religion, including funerals. This one just across the line in Monroe County, in Owen County, just across the line, but across the state. Klan funerals. The Klan in Indiana was very good at explaining to its members and would-be members who the enemy was, who it was that was threatening America, that was taking away the rights of 100% Americans. And the number one enemy in Indiana were Catholics. Now, those of you of a certain age will remember the 1960 election and the suspicions about John Kennedy because he was Catholic. Younger people have difficulty, I think, understanding anti-Catholicism, a deep, deep tradition since the days of Martin Luther that's inherent in America from the very beginning. Strong prejudices against Catholics that wax and wane, but that become especially powerful, significant in the 1920s. And the Klan picked up on this and made all sorts of allegations about this church led by a foreign pope, with hierarchical structures, with anti-democratic structures, with its own parochial schools, with celibate priests, and on it went. The Klan was full of myths about Catholicism. They were storing in their churches guns, rifles for when the Pope was coming to take over America. Catholic conspiracies related to the dangers of Catholicism was immigration. And often they're the same because many Catholics were immigrants or the children or grandchildren of immigrants, Irish and German. But particularly by the 1920s, new kinds of immigrants were creating great, great concerns in America. Immigrants not from Northern and Western Europe, but from Eastern Europe, from Poland, from Southern Europe, from Italy. These immigrants, these new immigrants, were not ever going to become 100% Americans. There was doubt whether they would ever be white Americans. They just were not us, and they were undesirable and a threat to the nation. And so in 1924, with great, great support and push from the Klan, Congress passed the Immigration Act, the National Origins Quota Act, which created a quota system. More immigrants from Northern and Western Europe, far fewer immigrants from Eastern and Southern Europe, and zero immigrants from Asian countries. That discriminatory quota system stayed in our immigration policy down to 1965. The Klan took great credit for that wonderful achievement. Catholics are the enemy. Jews, of course, are the enemy. Another tradition in Western civilization that flourishes in the United States, again, waxing and waning, but becoming especially powerful in the 1920s. This is the time when Ivy League universities began to institute quota systems. Anti-Semitism in all sorts of ways and all sorts of expressions, even in Indiana, where the Jewish population was relatively small. Often the Catholic or the Klan leadership would call for boycotts of Jewish businesses. This is one of the great Klan leaders. Daisy Douglas Barr was an amazing figure. She was not only one of the most charismatic of Klan speakers, she became the first vice chair of the Indiana State Republican Party. And African Americans are the enemy. I probably need not tell you this, but we need to remember it always. From 1619 to the present, race has been at the center of American history. And for many, many white Americans, that has meant a conviction that African Americans are second-class citizens. Exacerbated in the 1920s by the showing of this film, The Birth of a Nation, which the Klan sponsored and showed in films in Main Street theaters and around courthouse squares and in churches and across America. A powerful expression of stereotypes of African Americans, especially African American men. All of this has a presence in Bloomington. All of you will know the Maxwell Addition part of Bloomington, south of campus. And I know that Guy Loftman, I saw him on this talk. Guy and I were involved in a little project where Guy discovered this in the county courthouse, this restriction, this covenant. Only the pure, and those words are very important, the pure white race, as if we know what pure white race was or is. And of course, the colored school, a reminder, that wonderful, wonderful marker, like a stick in our eye, reminding us that in this wonderful community, there were once segregated schools. So these are the enemies: Catholics, immigrants, Jews, African Americans. Put them in the middle of the ocean and sink them. The Klan didn't usually talk that way. Speakers in public meetings, that's not very nice. And the Klan in Indiana tried very hard to be nice Hoosiers, not to say these outrageous things. There's another element in the stew that makes up the Klan's definitions of enemies, and that is scientific racism, the science of eugenics, which became very popular in the first 3 decades of the 20th century. Some of you, most of you will know the controversies over Jordan Hall. I was on that committee, and I'm absolutely in favor of the conclusion of the committee, the decision of the trustees. If you look at what was written and said about race by the best scientists of our day, if you haven't yet understood this, you'll be astonished. And we're talking about scientists from Harvard and Yale and Stanford and Indiana University, who were convinced that there's a hierarchy with the white folks at the very top in intellectual and cultural abilities, going down, down, down till you get to the blackest and most African at the very bottom of that hierarchy. In other city circumstances, talking about this subject, I need obliged to say what I don't think I need to say here, but for a long, long time, we've known, scientists have known, that this is a technical term, this is bullshit. And yet it is still believed implicitly by white Americans across this country in all sorts of ways, who also believe and are fearful of this vision of America by a Klan speaker in 1923, that the white race is committing suicide, that they're being replaced by people of color, of difference, of inferiority. Again, deep in our culture, down to the present. There are other issues that attract people to the Klan, that the Klan pushes as a reform organization to redeem America, to make America as it was once, great and good. Among them, perhaps the leading one is prohibition. This is the time of the outlaw of alcohol and the failure to enforce the law, which very much upset Klan members and leaders. And they spent a lot of time on the issue of prohibition and prohibition enforcement and all the evils that they argued resulted from alcohol. There's also a lot of concern about sex. This is the jazz age. These flappers gyrating on dance floors didn't even wear underwear, some people said. And you know what they did in the backseat of a Model T, some people said. Their disregard of conventions infuriated traditionalists, especially when they were displayed in such a positive way in those films that showed across Indiana that come out of Hollywood. And Hollywood, of course, the Klan reminded folks all the time was the product of Jews, foreigners. It may be difficult to believe, but I do believe it after spending 3 years working on this book. That most of those who joined the Klan in the 1920s genuinely believed in what the Klan was about. They were true believers. They were proud of their membership, as these four people are standing between the American flag and the Christian flag, their masks upraised. Good, normal, proud Americans. Women did join the Klan in large numbers. They played an important role in the Klan, especially in building up public schools and public libraries. The public schools especially to counter the threat from parochial schools, in challenging corruption that the Klan found to be endemic, not only in prohibition enforcement, but in many aspects of public life, of civic life, of government life. The Klan was not a bunch of roots. The Klan had, from near the beginning, a very sophisticated business organization. This is their manual, again, from the Indiana Historical Society Library, detailed instructions on how you recruit members, on how you deal with finances, on how you run meetings, all the stuff of a sophisticated business organization in this manual. The Klan was sophisticated in its marketing, in its propaganda, in its messaging, in its theatrical performances, and they put on fantastic performances, chief among them these parades. Lots and lots of parades down the main streets and around the courthouse squares that extended for miles, that featured always the American flag and the Christian cross. This is one in Bloomington, and you will recognize that street scene, I think. And you can see how far back, not a very good photograph, but there aren't many, in fact, I don't know of any others, maybe someone else does, of a Klan parade in Bloomington, but they extend way back to the courthouse in downtown Bloomington. Parades that always included a band, and in bigger parades, many bands. This is the best band in the state, lots of people said, the one from Muncie, Indiana. The Klan also was very good at putting on massive rallies. This one in Kokomo over the 4th of July lasted several days with all the features: entertainment, good food, music, preaching, speeches, and of course, in the evening, a massive parade and a burning of the rugged cross. The Klan produced its own sheet music, its own songs. If you want to go on to one of the right-wing websites, I'll tell you offline, you can find on one of these white supremacist websites today a recording of a 1920s Klan version of the bright fiery cross. Klan made its own records at Jeanette Studios in Richmond, Indiana, the same studios where Louis Armstrong, a young black trumpeter, recorded his first solo. The ironies there are interesting. The Klan made its own films, 2 films in particular, that were shown in movie theaters and in churches and schools, pushing the message of 100% Americans, of redeeming America, of saving America from the enemies who were at the gate. An organization like this, with these kinds of values, with this kind of membership and support, is sooner or later going to enter the political arena. And it did in early 1924 in the primary elections, going into partnership mostly with Republican candidates, a few Democrats, but almost all Republican candidates, and sweeping the primaries in the spring and then the general election in the fall, electing in the fall of 1924 a majority of the members of the Indiana General Assembly and a governor, Ed Jackson, without doubt, in my opinion, the worst governor who has ever governed in the state of Indiana. This is the front page of the Klan newspaper, the Fiery Cross, which comes out of Indianapolis every week and is sold in downtowns and small towns across the state of Indiana. The Fiery Cross is digitized. If you want to hear the Klan's own words, their own explanation of the world, the worldview, this is an excellent place to get it. I spent weeks and weeks and weeks in the pages of the Fiery Cross. There's opposition. I'd like to tell you that from the very beginning there was strong opposition to the Klan, but that's simply not true. The opposition was very, very small, very slow in forming, and very limited. Lots and lots of groups and organizations that you think or would hope would have stood up did not stand up to the Klan. Catholics, many Catholics did. And Catholics were beginning to move into the middle class in the 1920s. Second and third generation descendants of immigrants began to see that they had an argument for full rights in the nation and began to see the dangers of the Klan to American ideals. And so they created an organization, the American Unity League, which sent out speakers, which had its own newspaper to counter the Fiery Cross, and which did, I think, excellent work in providing an oppositional voice to the Klan. So too from African Americans, an organized effort from the NAACP, the greatest civil rights organization in our history, one that doesn't get enough credit, I think, for their achievements over the 20th century. There were, by the early 1920s, thank goodness, NAACP branches in almost all the larger towns and cities in the state, and they began to organize, to hold rallies, to protest the Klan, and especially to organize African-American voters in the 1924 elections and thereafter to vote against Klan candidates. There was newspaper opposition. The Indianapolis Times won a Pulitzer Prize for its investigative reporting of the Klan. I'd like to say that there was lots of newspaper opposition. There was not. There was very little at the beginning, and it took a long time for newspaper editors to decide that while they might lose subscriptions by opposing the Klan, they did need to stand up to this organization. The Indiana Bar Association stood up, meeting at West Baden. Some of you who know the history of West Baden will know there were good reasons for lawyers to meet at West Baden who wanted to have some fun and maybe a little taste of alcohol in 1923, but they did good things in 1923 by passing this very courageous resolution condemning the Klan by the Indiana Bar Association. And of course, we always want to see what students are thinking. I think students are canaries in the mine. And thank God they often take views opposing majority old people's ideas and sentiments. And here's a student newspaper, an alternative from 1924, where the students are mocking the Klan. I like the image of the student building, has a different name now, with the Klan hood on the top. So there was opposition. It's very important that there was opposition, but it was slow, it was late in coming. Klan candidates in 1928 still carried elections in much of Indiana. It was a long, slow decline. That decline of the Klan was very much helped by the evils of the Grand Dragon of the Indiana Klan, D.C. Stevenson, one of the most important national figures in the Klan of the 1920s, but one of the most evil men who ever walked the soil of Indiana. Stevens was eventually tried and convicted for brutally raping and assaulting and murdering a young woman, Madge Oberholzer, which led him to the Indiana State Penitentiary in Michigan City. You think that would be enough? Well, it certainly didn't. It certainly hurt the Klan. People began to leave the Klan. It lost some of its power. But as I said, Stevenson in late 1925 and still in 1928, the Klan won electoral victories. So it's a slow decline. Is it dead? Well, in some ways, the Klan is dead by 1930, but its ideals live on. We can see them on the basketball court. Bill Garrett, our great IU All-American from Shelbyville, everywhere he played, from Ann Arbor to Evanston, was the only African-American on the court. I'd like to look ahead, though, a few years to 1953, when this team won the national championship. And I'll let you speculate why Branch McCracken couldn't find an African-American player, only one, or maybe more. Went up the road at Crispus Attucks and elsewhere in the state were some really fantastic basketball players. There is, by the end of of World War II, some stirring of what we now know as the Civil Rights Movement. I love this photograph in the Union Building of young students who had just formed a branch of the NAACP on the IU campus. And of course, by the early 1960s, they are marching in the Civil Rights Movement, a movement that did bring some change, a movement that also frightened traditional white Americans and created a kind of blowback. The best expression of that in Indiana is the 1964 Democratic primary, where one of the leading candidates was George Corley Wallace, the segregationist governor from Alabama, who pioneered in the Indiana campaign and across the nation the politics of rage, of outrage, and the politics of dog whistles or coded language. Wallace was really good at this by 1964 and attracted a lot of white voters. Here in front of his headquarters hotel in downtown Indianapolis, African-American NAACP members are protesting, and then there's a protest of the protesters. And this is a very important photograph because it shows that battle flag of the Confederacy for what it is. It's a flag of white supremacy, of white racism. It is not a flag of heritage. And those who think it is, I believe, are misled and misunderstand key factors in American history. It was only the Civil Rights Movement that brought out the waving of this flag of treason. So the space is created by this backlash for the Klan, for people to begin to try to organize a new Klan, new Klaverns in Indiana. And they hold parades and rallies in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and even down to the recent past. Here's my favorite photograph. You have the elements here. You have the militia guy in the front with the Klan insignia on his shoulder, and then the Confederate battle flag on his sleeve, the beard, and all the other stuff that we've come so accustomed to seeing in our own time. But I love the guy on the left. What a Hoosier. He's not saying anything really horrible or nasty. He's saying just it's nice to be white. Good, nice Hoosier guy. But he didn't learn too much grammar in school because he spells the word ITS in a way that I've never seen it spelled. There's something very serious about this particular march and many other marches. The Klan had the power to intimidate, even in the 80s and 90s, when it was a very, very tiny, almost insignificant, powerless organization. When it showed up in parades and rallies, there were always more protesters, there were always more police, there were always more media. But the Klan could still intimidate. Its robes and hoods, its cross, all had a power that testifies to the strength of the Klan propaganda campaign, marketing campaign of the 1920s. It's still with us today. Those symbols still upset us. Here we have 3 African Americans watching these few Klan members walk by. And I like to imagine what they're thinking, especially the woman in the middle, holding her son, embracing her son, field glasses in her hand to see who's marching by. What's she thinking? Is she thinking perhaps about her son growing up and what she's going to have to tell him, the talk she's going to have with him at some point as a teenage Black kid, especially when he wants to drive a car? She knows, and the Klan brings home that message. There have been instances of racial violence in recent years. In our own community, the firebombing of the Black Market. There's now a Marco there. Just 25 miles up the road in Martinsville, the murder of Carol Jenkins. Both tragedies that have left scars, that have left memories, painful memories, for those of us who pay attention to the past. And more recently, we've had events like this where the president actually said there were good people on both sides. I've tracked and write a bit about this fellow in the center here. This is Matt Heimbach from Paoli, Indiana, one of the major organizers of the Charlottesville rally of 2017. A very sophisticated fellow, a very skilled user of the internet and media and theatrical performance. He's dressed for theater here in this image in Charlottesville, just like Klan members of the 1920s were. Always in these Klan rallies over the last 50 years, as I said, there are many more protesters of the Klan than there are Klan members. And that's the positive side of the Klan's recent history. But it's still with us in all sorts of ways. In the knowledge that it was once a mainstream organization that was once very, very sophisticated and successful in promoting ideals of 100% Americanism, a very, very, very dangerous notion. A story that I believe is not suited for the sidebars of our books, our history books, but for the main chapters, for the main pages. A story that is as American as apple pie. And so what I think we need to do is cut these cords. This is a wonderful sculpture piece in the Meyer Sculpture Garden near Grand Rapids, Michigan. The human head is bound by cords that keep the eyes closed, that hold the book over the ears so that the human being cannot see, cannot hear, cannot read the books of history. I'm a little bit prejudiced on this as a historian, but I think we need to read the books of history, not the patriotic history that some want us to read, but our true history, our history that's full of inspiring stories and heroes and achievements of greatness, but a history that is also full of tragedies, of opportunities to do good where Americans failed. My great hero is Abe Lincoln from Southern Indiana. He always spoke with the accent of a Hoosier. He said that America, the United States, was the last best hope of the world. Not the best in the world, but the best hope of the world. And he meant, of course, American ideals of liberty and justice and equality for all. And I'd like to hope, even in these troubled times in which we're all very, very anxious about our present and our future, I'd like to hope that that great moral arc of the universe is bending toward justice. And I do actually believe that it is. And I have to hope that it is for these four wonderful kids, my grandkids, who deserve to live in a nation more committed to its ideals than the nation we now have. So we have some time for comment and question. This is my email address. I'd be happy to have a comment or question from you if you can't and don't want to ask it now. So that's what I have to say, and the floor is open.
Before we take any questions, I would like for you to raise your hand if possible in your window, and we'll take them in order since we have so many guests with us today. But I saw Mark Kellums first. So Mark, go ahead.
Where did the reputation of Morgan County and Martinsville come from? The death of that woman that we saw, or?
Yes. Carol Jenkins' murder on the streets of Martinsville. The fact that for years and years and years, no one they could not find, cynics would say did not want to find, who murdered her. Klan rallies in Martinsville, just a handful of people. And then I write about this. I've got several paragraphs on this in the last chapter of the book. Several other things that some people in Martinsville did that were really, really stupid. Some of you remember a basketball game played up in the John Wooden Fieldhouse by the Bloomington team in the late 90s. Martinsville in many ways is no different from many other communities in Indiana and in America, but it's gotten this bad rap, partially deserved. I sometimes am accused of defending Martinsville, partially undeserved.
Thank you.
Owen Johnson.
Jim, I'm curious how sufficient you found the historical record, the archives. Has a reasonable amount of stuff been kept?
Yes, one of the reasons, there are two reasons I studied Indiana. It's the only thing I know. And secondly, the sources are unusually good for Indiana. We've been blessed in the state by good librarians and archivists and historians who have gathered the materials. And so the primary sources, I mentioned the Indiana Historical Society, but lots of other places, are full of excellent primary sources. And in addition, I would say, Owen, the digitization of newspapers is a blessing. I spent a lot of time reading newspapers online and doing keyword searches, which really, really enriched my understanding.
Leslie Green.
Yes, so it appears that the 1920s was a very strong time for Klan and for those kind of sentiments. How do you think that compares to today? There certainly seems to be a resurgence of white supremacy and violence toward that. So, and
Yeah, that's a good.
Just the bad guys that we're seeing a lot of common American citizens, if you will, in that movement.
That's a good question. I'm sure you all had that question in the back of your heads, unless you nodded off. And I do write about that in the last chapter of the book. Very quickly, it's not the same. History never repeats itself. It may rhyme occasionally, but there are similarities. And I must say they're rather frightening similarities, even down to the words and the language used by the Klan in the 1920s and used in our own time. There are similarities. There are lots of similarities. I think just one point I should have made earlier on, but didn't. I think our danger today is not from the men and women who wear white robes and hoods. I think the attack on American ideals and constitutional rights comes from men and women who look very, very well dressed and very respectable. Not at all the great unteachables. Men in nice suits and women in nice silk blouses. And you all know who I'm talking about. Some of them with Ivy League educations, Stanford history majors, and on and on and on, who have these ideas that I must say, as a citizen, I just think are wacko. But there they are. There they are.
I have a question.
Just one moment. Judy Schroeder was next. Judy, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Was there any connection between the rise of the Klan in the United States and other populist nativist movements? I'm thinking of Mosley's Brown Shirts, for example, in England. Was there any, and we see the same rise of these populist nativism in other parts of the world. So is this a national or an international?
It's international. It's not global, but it's certainly other nations. And what I'm talking about in the Klan of the 20s, in space and time, we could go back in American history and time and find other movements, not exactly like the Klan, but very similar. And we can go across space in the 1920s and find other movements, not exactly like the Klan, but similar. And part of what's going on in the 20s is the reaction to the Great War, to World War I, and all the discontents and all the animosities that horrible war let loose across the world, certainly in Weimar Germany, but in the United States and Great Britain and France and elsewhere, there were these right-wing movements, these populist movements, these movements that led eventually to the Third Reich.
Charlotte?
Yes, I have a question about the Catholics. Father Coughlin in the 30s was a Catholic who fomented the same kind of hate. And I wonder what his relationship to the Klan heritage is.
Well, I don't know the specifics on that. The question would have, I don't know what he's doing in the 1920s. I doubt he's a member of the Klan, but he certainly used some of the same techniques that the Klan used in terms of propaganda and sophisticated use of media, and some of the same techniques that George Wallace used in 1964 in Indiana. So Coughlin is a good example of the possibilities on the dark side.
I have a good book about original book from the 30s for you. Thank you.
Sarah Laughlin?
Jim, my husband had an uncle, Donald Laughlin, who I believe was the right-hand man of DC Stevenson. He was Catholic, came from he was somewhere in the middle of 15 children. So I've always wondered about that. Have you come across his name, or how would you explain it?
No, I haven't. And if you have any information, Sarah, I'd like to have it if you can email it to me. That is unusual, but there are lots of unusual stories, the ironies, and I try not to laugh and make fun about this subject, but it's impossible not to sometimes. Yeah.
I think I understand that when DC Stevenson fell, Donald made a quick exit to Dayton, Ohio, when the family still lives there, and they didn't ever come back across the Indiana line because because he might have been arrested. So he's kind of the black sheep of so I don't really know any more about it.
The best Klan expat I know is Pat Emmons from South Bend, who, when the Klan went down, fled to Canada, went to Saskatchewan, and created a very powerful Klan organization in Saskatchewan.
Wow.
All right, we will need to formally close our program, but Jim, can you stay around for a few more minutes?
I'd be happy to stay. I see some hands up there. I see Evelyn LaFollette raising her hand and others. I'm happy to stay. I'll have to cut back my extensive social life today, but I can stay and talk some more.
Okay, great. Well, hold your questions for just a moment and we'll come right back to you. If you'd like to rewatch this program, you can check out our YouTube channel, search for Bloomington Rotary Club, and you'll have access to all of our programs if you'd like to rewatch this tomorrow. Thanks for your presentation, Jim. And in honor of your presentation, we'll be making a donation to Beacon, our quarterly speaker recognition recipient. Sally, will you tell us about next week's program, please?
Yes, another amazing program next week. We'll hear from Tom Rosnowski, songwriter, storyteller, performer, and singer, with the program called The Porch Light is On, Saturday Evening Radio.
All right, Natalie, would you please show our four-way test so we can recite that together to close our meeting? Of the things we think,
say, or do.
First,
is it the truth?
Second,
is it fair to all concerned?
Third,
will it build
goodwill and better friendships.
Fourth, will be beneficial to all concerned. And fifth, is it?
Thank you again for being with us today.